In Module 15, we'll be using the thesaurus to find synonyms, using the research services, some exercises and their solutions, and a final summary. So why use the thesaurus and the research tools? The thesaurus can help find the right words for clearer communication. It can also stop the use of commonly repeated words. The research tool is a great way of adding further information or defining clarity within data entries. So let's begin. To start, we have a spreadsheet with a fictional library. Our spreadsheet has 7 data ranges: the book title, the author, the ISBN number, fiction or non-fiction, times the book has been loaned, a one-word brief, and a synopsis or brief description of each one of the books. The thesaurus can't really help us with the first 5 data ranges, as these are all definitive. However, when it comes to the brief, we can use the thesaurus to find a better description of each book. To use the thesaurus, select the cell you wish the thesaurus to be used in. Go to the Review tab and the ribbon, and thesaurus could be found as the third option on the left. A list of synonyms or similar-like words appears. Romance is a far better word than love story for our brief, so to use this, select the drop-down button on the right and choose Insert, and the synonym will be updated to the selected cell. There's 2 options here: insert or copy. We can always copy the word to be used elsewhere. We can use the thesaurus in other ways too. If we select Life Story and go to the thesaurus, a list of synonyms based on this selected cell appears, and we can choose from memoirs, autobiography, life history, biography, and many other different synonyms. One of the interesting things about using the thesaurus is, while we can insert our synonym, we can also search for other synonyms based on the one we've just selected. So in this case, biography, if we left-click, other synonyms to the words biography appear, so we can use those too. Autobiography, for example, is a far better brief than life story. So again, we choose the drop-down menu, select Insert, and our brief updates. The research services are a great way of defining data, adding clarity, or simply used for finding out more information. To use the research services, click on the selected cell, go to the Review tab up in the ribbon, and use the Research button here on the left. Once selected, the research window opens here on the right, and has 3 options: the search bar, the search type, and a lookup window. There are different types of searches available, ranging from reference books to online. We'll stick with online for now. Once we're happy with these settings, click on the Start Searching button here on the right-hand side. The lookup window will return all the online values based on the search, and these range from Amazon to Wikipedia to Goodreads to many, many more. We can also change the search type. We can use the dictionary, thesaurus, or even translate our selected cell. And the translation appears here. We also have other research options, which are available down here at the bottom of the window. Clicking this button will give us a list of different reference books and different reference sites. Checking or unchecking will add these to our search factors. When we do an online search, all we need to do is click on any one of the options that appears. And the hyperlink will open up the address in Firefox or Internet Explorer or any other chosen browser. Information based on our search appears online. For the first exercise, use the thesaurus to change any 3 of the values held within the brief. OK, to change the values held within the brief, select the cell, go to Review, select Thesaurus, and insert more appropriate synonyms for each type. For the last exercise, use the research services to translate any 3 books held within the title range. OK, to use the research services, click on the selected book, go to the Review tab, and select Research. Choose Translate from the drop-down menu, and click Start Searching. Once the search is complete, select Insert, and do the same for each book selected. All 3 titles are now translated. So in summary, the thesaurus can help when repeated words or common phrases are being overused. It can also help us find the right word for the right situation. The research tool can help define data and place hyperlinks for further information or clarification. We can also use the research tool's reference features for the dictionary, thesaurus, or even translate any phrases or words into other languages. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next module.
As visual checks, using formula for automatic checks, using the rangefinder, auditing a worksheet, using error checking, watching and evaluating formula, some exercises and their solutions, and a final summary. So why validate data? Well, with large or bulky workbooks, it helps to have various methods of error checking. Reliably validating data helps prevent the rise of any cumulative errors, and using totals in validation can make it easy to find summarized data. So let's begin. Before we get started, it might be helpful to use the Developer tab for some further functions within this module. As you can see, on our ribbon, we don't have a Developer tab. To create the Developer tab, go to the drop-down bar here for the Customize Quick Access toolbar options. Go to More Commands, and go to Customize Ribbon. As you'll notice, the Developer tab is unchecked. Check the Developer tab and click OK. And the Developer tab appears here at the top in the ribbon. Clicking on the Developer tab opens up further options with macros, add-ins, and inserting form control. For example, the Insert tab here contains our form controls. Form controls help us when it comes to data validation and also speeds up data entry. The one we'll be using for our module is the checkbox. To use the checkbox, select the cell you wish the checkbox to be inserted into. Click on the Insert button and click on Checkbox. Our cursor changes to a Draw Checkbox cursor. Clicking inside the cell will create the checkbox. We may need to move this into a better position. We can also alter the text next to the checkbox or remove it altogether. And we can also resize the checkbox as well. Once we're happy with this position, click away. The checkbox works by checking or unchecking what's within the box. But if we click on the cell it's contained in, we can see there's nothing inside the formula bar. However, we need to add a value to our checkbox, or at least know where our value is stored. So if we right-click on our checkbox and go to Format Control, the Format Control window opens, and we can add a cell link. Generally, we can just add this cell where the checkbox is contained as our cell link. So the selector, click on the cell, and press Return. Once we're happy, press OK. Now if we check our checkbox, the value true appears next to it. If we uncheck, it changes to false. We may need to resize our cells to see this more clearly. So let's continue with the first part of the module. We have another fictional spreadsheet here for Springvale Limited, where they have a charity event on with recipient name, the company they work for, whether or not a ticket has been sent to them, a validating column, which we'll come back to, have they replied back, the RSVP, their email, and the expected donation if they turn up. To the right here, we have two different validation columns. This is a ticket sent validation and RSVP validation. Normally, these columns would be hidden, or the true or false value stored within these two respective columns here. But just to show you how validation works, I've kept them to the side so we can see any changes take place. We also have the amount of tickets to be sent, the RSVPs received, and a confirmed count of how many will turn up, and a donation total should they turn up. So to use totals as a visual check, the easiest method is of course to use the AutoSum feature. We can select our data range, click AutoSum, and the values are automatically calculated here at the bottom. Remember, this is always a function. In this case, the sum function. So equals sum G4 to G9 means that anything within the G4 to G9 range is calculated here in the bottom. Also, if we change any value, it will automatically update. This is a handy feature, but it doesn't help us here. Calculating the donations here is helpful only in regards to the amount of donations we can potentially receive. Unfortunately, due to the way the spreadsheet works out, all the donations are conditional. In other words, if one of our recipients turns up, then the company will receive the donation. To help validate these totals, we have 4 different totals set up. We have our AutoSum for our maximum possible donations. We have the donation total that's based on how many people turn up, a confirmed count of how many people may turn up, the amount of tickets to be sent, and the RSVPs received. This is where our checkboxes come into play. If we send a ticket to J. Smith, with the check in the box, the message next to it changes and tells us that a ticket has been sent. If J. Smith then replies, the tickets to be sent goes down by 1, the RSVPs go up by 1, the confirmed count goes up by 1, and the donation total updates. If we send a ticket to T. Burgess, but he doesn't reply, no other changes will take place. If we send a ticket to L. Tucker, and they reply, we have 3 tickets left to be sent, 2 RSVPs received, a confirmed count of 2 people, and the donation total has gone up by J. Smith's 1,000 contribution and L. Tucker's 750 contribution. So let's have a look at how this works. So let's look at the ticket sent area first. Checking or unchecking the box changes the validation here. True or false. We can also see that when we check or uncheck the box, the message to the right changes. Our tickets to be sent total updates as well. The ticket sent area is what's called an if statement. If I4 is equal to true, then display ticket sent. If it's anything else, display send ticket. As is currently true, the ticket sent statement is appearing. If we uncheck it, it changes to send ticket. But we can use if statements in other ways too. If we click on an empty cell, I'll paste in an if statement I've already typed out. big spender. But this cell has an if statement. If G4, here's G4, is greater than 990, then display big spender. If it's anything else, display miser. As G4 is 1,000, it displays big spender. If we change G4 to be less than 1,000, it changes to miser. And as you can see, our author sum updated, as well as our donation total. So that's the if statements, and we'll be coming to that in later modules. The other visual check that's in our spreadsheet is the tickets to be sent. This is what's called a COUNTIF function. COUNTIF D4 to D9 contains send ticket. So in this range here, if D4 to D9 contains send ticket, count how many times send ticket appears and place the count in this cell. There are 4 send tickets in our column, and the 4 is updated here. If we add another ticket, it decrements down to 3, as there's only 3 instances of send ticket in these 3 cells. So the COUNTIF works like the if statement, but in this case it adds a function to the if statement. Count if this cell range contains this value. And we've done the same thing in the RSVPs received. Count if J4 to J9 is equal to true. J4 to J9 has 2 true statements, so it's incremented to 2. And we've applied the same thing with the confirm count. Exactly the same function. The last visual check is in the donation total. This uses a separate function called the sumif function. Sumif J9 contains true, then increment donation. In other words, any instance of the word true within this range will add the donation from it to this cell. So we have 2 trues of 1,750. And this has been added together within this total. Using totals as visual checks is a great way of summarizing data. We can see at a glance exactly how many tickets need to be sent, how many people are confirmed to arrive, and what the expected donation may be. We can also use the subtotal function. If you need more information on the subtotal function, please revisit Module 12. So we've seen how totals can give us visual checks, but what about making some formulas that can do these checks for us automatically? I've inserted 2 formulas into the spreadsheet. There's one here and one here. What these formulas are designed to do is, if an unexpected value is returned in these cells, then an error will appear here, and we can see straight away what that will be. For example, if we look at this formula, I have an if-or statement here. So if G10 is greater than 6,500, or if G10 is less than 0, then return error. Anything else, return OK. So for example, this is the expected value from our donations. If we go over this value, the cell returns an error, and it turns red. It turns red because I use conditional formatting. In this case, anything that contains the word error will give a light red fill with a dark red text. And the same thing here. If B15 is not equal to B13, return an error. Otherwise, click OK. So while we have our spreadsheet set up to automatically reply and add from the RSVPs and the donation total, if someone accidentally types in a new value here, it returns an error. Once the values are reset, the two cell values also reset. So let's add a formula to the spreadsheet. In the cell next to the donation total, we're going to add another if statement. Remember, all functions and formulas start with an equals sign. Equals if. Then we open the argument, and then we set up the logical test. In this case, anything over 6,500. So if E15 is greater than 6,500, then return an error. Anything else is okay. And then we close the argument. So we have our if statement, our cell range, our logical operator, which is the greater than sign, a value, 6,500, and then the statement to be returned if false, and the statement to be returned if it's okay. Once we're happy with that, we click OK. As the value is under 6,500, it remains as OK. If we click it and change the value, we get an error. And we can also add some conditional formatting. So we can use the highlight cell rules for text that contains error. And then click OK. So using if statements, and or statements can help us maintain precision within a spreadsheet. If you need further information on using functions and formulas, please refer to Module 9. We've actually seen the rangefinder at work when using Excel spreadsheets, particularly when we come to use functions and formulas. If we click on a cell that we know contains a formula, and then double-click it, the blue box is the rangefinder for this particular formula, in this case E15. If we click on another cell that we know contains a formula and double-click that, here again is our blue box, which is our rangefinder. To click off this or to click away, just press Enter or press Escape. If we look at this formula and double-click, we can see two rangefinders. The one in blue, B15, is highlighted with a blue rangefinder box, and the one in red, B13, is highlighted with this red or pink rangefinder box. Where we have more complicated formula in E15, we have an array rangefinder here, J4 to J9, which is in blue, and the donation range, which is in pink. If we need to move our rangefinder or resize it, moving the cursor to the edge of the rangefinder box gives us our cardinal point compass cursor, and we can literally move the entire box and its range up, down, left or right, or wherever we need to put it. If we only want part of our range, we use the toggles on the corners. This allows us to make our ranges smaller or larger, or incorporate larger ranges. What's handy about this is if we have a formula that can be used elsewhere, we can copy our formula, paste it elsewhere, and then move the rangefinders to the correct positions that we need. Our spreadsheet is quite simple. But what if we had a spreadsheet that had many values, many formulas and functions, or was very large? Even with our current spreadsheet, we have many different formulas and functions, but they can't be seen, and sometimes it's helpful to know how they work. This is where the auditing function can help. To use the auditing functions, go to the Formulas tab in the ribbon, and they're here. There are 6 options here, and we'll return to the error checking in a minute or two. Let's look at the options on the left: trace precedence, trace dependence, and remove arrow. How trace precedence works is if we have a formula in a cell, as we do here in D4, we can see what cells this function relies on, and also see where this function gets its values. So for example, if we need to see where this cell gets its values, we click on trace precedence. And an arrow appears that tells us that cell I4 provides its values to the function stored in cell D4. If we need to see where this value gets sent, if it gets sent, we click on trace dependence. So what we're seeing is what cell relies on this one. So if we click trace dependence, we can see that the value here goes towards the function stored in cell B12. If we look at cell B12 and look at the function stored within it, we can see we have a countif function for an array D4 to D9. So if we click on its precedence, we can see that the function in B12 relies on all the values in this array. All the values in this array also rely on all the values stored in the array I4 to I9. This might seem complicated, but it's just helpful to think of it as the value here gets pushed into the function there, and the value performed by this function gets pushed into the function here. And we can do this with all the functions. We can see where they rely on and where they go. Sometimes this is the end of the line, so there's no trace dependence found for this formula. To help us out when the arrows get quite complicated, we can remove arrows. We can either remove all the arrows or just remove the precedent arrows or the dependent arrows. Or remove them all together. Another auditing function that can help is the Show Formulas button. If we click this, instead of seeing the values returned by the formulas, we see the formulas. And clicking on a formula will also reveal the range finders as well. When we create a formula, particularly if it's a complicated one, we can click on our formula and also use the Evaluate Formula button. A window opens and allows us to evaluate each area of the formula to see if there's any errors or to see if any changes need to be made. Clicking on Evaluate will run through the formula and then reveal the answer. Clicking on the Show Formulas button again will hide the formulas and return the values. If we have a problem with any formulas or functions in Excel, Excel will give us a range of different messages. In this case, in cell F12, we have an incorrect value in our formula. When we highlight the cell, we get this exclamation box here on the left-hand side. If we click on this, it gives us a range of options to deal with the problem. The best way to deal with the problem is to use the Formulas tab and the Error Checking button here. There are 2 options. We can trace the error or go through an entire spreadsheet error check. If we trace the error, we get an arrow to tell us where the problems are coming from. In this case, the problem's coming from either G10 or the range G4 to G9. We can also remove these arrows. The other method is to use error checking, which, much like spell check in Word, will go through the entire spreadsheet looking for problems.